Hey everybody, did you know you can go to colinmullen.com in order to get art and art prints? It's true, it's why I made the website, and there's lots of art on there. Go and get it, colinmullen.com. So hey everybody, for this week I wanted to just give tips on how to do acrylic paint, because that's a thing that people ask, like I want to get started painting, how do I do it? Now, oil paint's another option, as is watercolors, but I primarily work in acrylics, so I'm going to be giving advice on that. A lot of this actually does transfer to oils. I don't know enough about watercolor to be able to tell you that stuff, but a lot of it does work with oil as well. So I think this will all be useful information. Just replace anytime I say water with turpentine and you're probably fine. Tip number 1, art supplies are expensive. Sorry, if you're going to cheap out on anything, I would cheap out on the canvas. Because especially in the beginning, it's not going to be something that you're going to keep. It doesn't really matter if it holds up that long. So get student grade canvases and student grade paint in the beginning, but know that the difference between good paint and cheap paint is the amount of filler that's in it, which means that basically you're going to have to put more paint down in order for it to look good. The colors won't be as vibrant, they won't be as interesting. It'll look kind of dead and boring, and so just sort of expect that from it. The more expensive brands like Golden and Liquitex Heavy Body are going to be much better looking, but they can be somewhere in the district of like 16, 20, something like that bucks per tube, and that gets really expensive. Always make sure you wash your brushes. Do not leave them standing in the paint water straight up. That just blunts the end. I mean, obviously gravity is coming down on them and it does a whole bunch of weird stuff. Water on wood will cause the wood to rot or warp, and then it just detaches from the brush entirely, and then you've got a useless brush. Water down your paint. This is another one that's important. If you water down your paint, you get a little bit more mileage out of it. You can also use medias. There's a bunch of different mixing medias that you can use in order to stretch out the use or the drying time of the paint if you want. I personally just like using a little bit of water. It gets you different effects as well as increases your control over it, and obviously waters down your paint so you can use a little bit going a lot further. I've talked about this in the past, but it's super useful for when you're wanting to sketch work out or you want to just get a fine detail going. Watered down paint, thinner paint, as long as it's not drippy, can actually have a lot more control than a just straight from the tube paint. Oil and acrylic do not mix. Kind of makes sense. It's literally oil and water. They will not mix. Acrylic is a water-based media, so it will not mix with oil. So if you try and paint acrylic over oil, it will not work. You can do it the other way. I'm not entirely sure why. I would not recommend that unless if you really need to, but yeah, they do not mix. You cannot mix the two like on your palette. It just won't work because it's literally water and oil. They just do not mix. Wet on wet painting is super useful and can get you those gradients when you know that up here it's yellow and down here it's red and you're not entirely sure what the shift over is or how to get that precise color. Painting a little bit of red where it needs to go, a little bit of yellow on the opposite side, and then pushing the two colors towards each other allows you to blend on the canvas rather than trying to mix that color. That being said, if you do this too much, or if you do it incorrectly, it'll just end up looking muddy, it won't look good, and that's bad. So it needs to be used sparingly, and you need to give your paints time to dry if you don't want to accidentally mix them on your canvas, like I'm saying here. Don't use tiny brushes. It'll make you go insane. Trying to cover a huge canvas with tiny little brushes will make you go insane. It's not good for your health. Instead, I recommend a detail brush, a round, and a big chunky flat. And the reason for that is each one of those will be able to provide one of the basic layering steps that you need to do. The chunky guy will be able to do the backgrounds, the round will be able to do, larger details, and then you've got the detail brush for the tiny stuff. It pretty much will cover everything you need to do. It's what I use in all my paintings. I recommend that set if you're going to buy some, and buy some nice ones. If you take care of them, they'll take care of you. I said the only thing you should really skimp on is the canvases, but let me just tell you right now, get bigger canvases. Those tiny little canvases, they're going to lead to you getting frustrated. You want to try and paint more, but the paint is wet, so you have to wait. And drying time is entirely relevant to your climate, how humid it is outside, a whole bunch of different factors, what paint you're using, what color it is. Even the same brand can have different drying times. So having a small canvas means that it takes forever for things to dry, and you're gonna just be waiting. And that is incredibly frustrating when you're doing art. It's also not good to be in the habit of doing tiny little brush strokes, which is why you need big brushes, big canvases. I recommend a 16 by 20. In metric, that's 40 by 50 centimeters. You want a bigger canvas just that way you're not spending as much time trying to fix your little mistakes. You can kind of work around the canvas, spend a little time in a spot, go, I screwed that up. We're gonna have to wait for it to dry for me to be able to fix that. We'll come back to it. You're gonna use a lot of black and a lot of white. They're kind of basic colors for your palette. So I recommend buying bigger tubes of those, but smaller tubes of everything else. Especially in the beginning when you don't know really where your color palette is. After a while you'll go, man, I'm using up a lot of red. I'm using up a lot of whatever. And you realize that you probably need to get a bigger tube of that. But don't bother getting a huge tube of everything because there are certain colors that you're just never going to use or you're going to use sparingly. I have a tube of magenta that I barely touched because when am I going to use that? But I needed it for one piece. Colors are very rarely actually absolutely pure. They usually have a hint of one side of the color wheel or the other. For instance, a blue might be a little bit more red or a little bit more green. And depending on which one it is, depends on how well it will mix with those colors. If you try and mix a red with a more greenish blue, then you're gonna get a little bit muddier of a color, because green and red are on opposite sides of the color wheel. There's a whole color theory lesson here, but just know when you're looking at the paints, try and figure out what the other color is. I don't think that this is a super basic tip, but if you're wondering why your colors are coming out muddy, that might be it. Try and, if you have on the tube, it says green hue or whatever on the blue, then try and use that to mix with the green, the cooler colors on the wheel. And you'll find that it turns out better than if you try and use that one to mix with a red, for example. Lastly, work in layers. You're gonna have your basic layer. For me, I like to have a sketch layer where I just kind of get an idea of where everything's going. Then I have the blocked in colors, which is usually thinned out paints, and then a little bit more detail from that, and a little bit more detail from that, and then signature. And so that ends up being about 4 or 5 layers, but I also end up doing sometimes an extra layer on those because I needed to do a little bit of touch-up work, or I need whatever. Something needed to change with it, but do not expect to go from white canvas to finished piece in one step. You need to put down some stuff, wait. Put down some stuff, wait. Part of what's nice about acrylic is how fast it dries. That annoys some people, but it allows you to work a lot faster. Anyway, if this was helpful for you, let me know in the comments. I'm gonna link at the end of this video all the different other art tutorial video stuff that I've done that's a little bit more general. Go ahead and watch those as well. If you're watching this video, you need those little oh, hey, that's how color theory works. That's how perspective works. That's how all those things work. Check those out. If there's anything that you want to know about that I have not addressed, let me know. I love making this content for y'all, so just let me know what y'all need to know. But hey, like I said, art is expensive. Art supplies are expensive. So I want to thank the people on Patreon who are making this channel happen, who are making it so that way I can put out art videos, who are making it so I can do this as a thing. If you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/RevScarecrow. And thank you to all the people on Patreon, especially the people at the $5 tier or more, such as Wapfu. Thank you, Wapfu. Thank you, Top Houndor. Thank you, Targo. Thank you, Spencer Cain. Thank you, Orthogonal Caster. Thank you, Mortibus. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Maliciousness. Thank you, Lost Nevada. Thank you, Kayla Hollinger. Thank you, Katana Squirrel. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, James at Games. Thank you, Gala. Thank you, Duxu. Thank you, Dragon. Thank you, Demetrius Gazgales. Thank you, Chiptune Glitch. Thank you, Bubba Fair. Thank you, Bep. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Amber. And thank you, Ants! Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and link off to those videos. I hope that this helped. If it did, let me know. If it didn't, let me know. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.